It's Saturday Night Live with your host, Ben Shapiro. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Shapiro.
Well, folks, we're coming on the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live. Now, I know you haven't watched it in years because it went totally woke, but they actually used to do skits that were really funny and now are considered far too edgy for TV. We're going to go through some of those in a moment. This video is sponsored by our friends at Black Rifle Coffee. Okay, now. Here's the thing. They would never make this skit today.
A skit?
Because if you say those words, then, people might get upset.
Big words,
But the whole point of that skit.
A skit?
Is that Chevy Chase is being a white racist piece of
skit.
That's the whole point of the skit.
A flippin' skit?
That's like the most anti-racist skit ever.
You just refer to what I do as skits.
That's super anti-racist. The whole point is that Chevy Chase is being a vicious racist, and Richard Pryor is coming right back at him. As he should.
Yo, mama.
Many of the same things that the left would cancel now for presumably being offensive are things that are specifically directed against the racism that they are supposedly fighting.
How about we try out hostile slave owner?
Don't want to say those words.
He never did say those words.
I'm station manager Dan Aykroyd. During the past few weeks in Los Angeles, actor Lee Marvin and his former live-in companion Michelle Triola Marvin have been in court to settle her claim that he owes her half his income from the 6 years they lived together.
A woman in this modern-day relationship may well give up all her own personal pursuits, as Michelle Marvin claims she did, to give her full support to her man's career. And Michelle Marvin is just asking that the courts recognize that reality. Dan, there's an old saying. Behind every successful man, there's a woman, a loving, giving, caring woman. But you wouldn't know about that, Dan, because there's no old saying about what's behind a miserable failure.
Jane, you ignorant... Bagged out, dried up, slunk meat like you and Michelle Triola know the rules. If you want a contract, sign on the dotted line. Oh, but let's all shed a tear for poor Michelle Triola. There was only testimony that she had sexual intercourse over 40 times with another man while living with actor Lee Marvin. But I suppose that sort of fashionable promiscuity means nothing to someone like you, Jane, who hops from bed to bed with the frequency of a cheap ham radio.
Again, what's funny about this is that, it is politically incorrect and they clearly hate each other. And so the whole point is instead of having like a normal debate, they're just insulting each other.
You're the sucker. You're the loser.
Joe, you ignorant...
So this presumably would not be allowed today, not because of what she says to him, but because of what he says to her, even though she leads off the skit by personally insulting him.
I guess what you and Michelle are saying is that when you're on your backs, the meter is running. Well,
this thing is not protecting women. It's setting a dangerous precedent, and it is dangerous for the trans community, women, minorities, anyone who is not a straight white man.
I will say that Jane, you ignorant has become part of the common parlance.
Dwight, you ignorant!
That's an actual thing. We'll get to more of this in a moment. First, start your day off with Black Rifle Coffee. Black Rifle Coffee helps you wake up each morning feeling dialed in, ready to make the most of your day so you can make the best of your year. Now is your chance to get 20% off your purchase with code DailyWire at blackriflecoffee.com. Black Rifle Coffee's coffees are roasted right here in the United States by a veteran-led team of expert roasters who take pride in serving coffee and culture to people who love America. Every purchase you make helps them further their mission to support veteran and first responder causes. Everything from getting funding and equipment to first responders to helping veterans get medical care. Black Rifle Coffee has a huge selection of dark roast, light roast, everything in between. Take the coffee quiz on their website, get matched with a blend perfectly tailored to your specific taste. Again, a portion of every single purchase you make with Black Rifle Coffee goes toward supporting veteran and first responder causes. Your money goes a long way toward giving back to those who serve our nation. Head on over to blackriflecoffee.com right now. Use code DailyWire for 20% off America's coffee. That's blackriflecoffee.com, code DailyWire. blackriflecoffee.com, code... So the question you should be asking yourself is, why is it bad to laugh at it? Why is it bad? Eddie Murphy is in it. And it was fine with Eddie Murphy.
A lot of people talk about racial prejudice, but talk is cheap.
You're not allowed to ever make fun of things. Things. If you say they're funny, you might be saying that they exist in real life.
Most things don't exist.
Now, if you laugh at that skit, you're the racist. Okay, no, that's not No. The answer is no.
MacGruber! He has a black employee now! MacGruber!
It's so stupid. I remember I was a big MacGruber fan. But again, they wouldn't make that joke now. But the whole point is that MacGruber's being racist and everybody explodes. They're making fun of the racism, guys. Alrighty, folks. Well, there's a reason why SNL is no longer what it once was, if ever it was that thing. But maybe a new day is dawning with a second Trump term. Nature is healing, and I am rooting very hard for Donald Trump to be the special live guest once more. Folks, so we're here to talk about what just happened. Bashar al-Assad, the Assad regime in Syria, is gone. And chaos is about to break loose. We're going to talk about the upsides and the downsides. In this, Ben Reacts. First, your reminder that this is the final day of our 50% off sale over at Daily Wire. Daily Wire Plus 50% off, but it ends today. It's our best deal of the year. When it's gone, it is gone for good. With Daily Wire Plus, you stay on top of breaking news. You get the truth behind the headlines, the facts others refuse to cover. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe right now. Do not wait. This deal ends today. Alrighty, so here's your actual update. On the ground right now, Bashar Assad is out. He apparently is already in Russia. Bashar Assad has been the ruler with an iron fist of Syria for the last 24 years. He, of course, follows in the footsteps of his father, Hafez al-Assad, and the Assad family has been in charge of Syria for the last 50 years or so. Now, Syria was always a sort of bizarre creation of the Sykes-Picot arrangement that emerged from the West, from France and Britain, particularly after World War I. And it's always been a bit of a mess. It has been particularly a mess given the number of different ethnic and religious groups inside Syria. So Syria has within it a large area that is controlled by the Kurds. It has a large area that is controlled by Shia. It has a large area that is controlled by Sunni. It has Druze. It has Christians. It has all sorts of people who are living in this gigantic area. Geographically, Syria is located to the west of Iraq. It is located to the east of Lebanon and to the northeast of Israel. And Turkey is to its north. Okay, so if you can sort of imagine all of that, that means that pretty much all of those forces are having some impact inside Syria. Now, Syria's civil war has been ongoing since 2011, and it has essentially pitted the Assad regime, which is backed by Iran and Russia, on the one hand, against Sunni Islamic militants, terrorists, many associated with ISIS or Al-Qaeda, and then some other sort of hodgepodge rebel groups who are Sunni in origin, some Kurds as well, who are involved in this rebellion against the Assad regime. And those were backed predominantly by Turkey, not the Kurds. The Kurds, as we'll see, are actually the rivals of Turkey, and Turkey has been using the chaos in Syria in order to launch its own incursions into the border regions of Syria in order to ethnically cleanse and move away the Kurds. Okay, so as we say, this entire state is a basket case. It's been a basket case for a long time. But because Bashar Assad's regime was held up chiefly by Iran and by Russia, because it was used as a thoroughfare by Iran to smuggle arms into Lebanon to Hezbollah, what that meant is that as Iran weakened and as Russia weakened, so too did the Assad regime. That's the real story of what's happening today and what's happened over the past few weeks. What changed, right? Because this civil war has been raging at a fairly high level for the last decade and a half. Over 300,000 people dead, over 12 million refugees. You remember, of course, the very famous pictures of toddlers watching up on the beaches of the Mediterranean who are trying to escape from Syria to get to Europe, for example. So what exactly happened that changed everything? The answer is that Israel completely shellacked Hezbollah. Hezbollah is the Iranian-controlled proxy group in Lebanon. As we mentioned, think of the geography. Lebanon is to the north of Israel, and it is to the west of Syria. And so Iran, via Iraq, had this entire Shia crescent that it was controlling territorially that extended from Iran through Iraq, through Syria, into Lebanon. And then the kind of tip of the crescent went all the way down into the Gaza Strip. And of course, there are other Iran-connected forces in places like Yemen with the Houthis. Okay, but the predominant territorially integrous, the sort of unified area that was controlled by Shia, went from Iran all the way to the Mediterranean into Lebanon. So when Israel decided it was going to take out Hezbollah because Hezbollah had fired some 8,000 to 10,000 rockets at Israel in solidarity with Hamas over the course of the last year, when Israel completely destroyed Hezbollah, and that's really what happened here. Israel destroyed Hezbollah's capacity to make war. They destroyed their long-range weaponry. They destroyed their short-range weaponry. They destroyed their capacity to even ship things into the south of Lebanon. They didn't just do that. They were also interdicting all sorts of material that was being sent from Iran through Syria and into Lebanon. That meant that Israel's Air Force was actually doing some pretty heavy lifting inside Syria as well, bombing particular targets in order to stop the Iranians from shipping material via Syria into Lebanon. Well, when Hezbollah got completely destroyed by Israel, Hezbollah was a major force that was upholding the Assad regime. And when Hezbollah disappeared, there went one leg that was the support for the Assad regime. Then there was another leg, and that was the Russians. So you'll recall back during the Obama administration, there was a lot of talk on what was going to happen with regard to the Syrian situation. You remember that Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, and Barack Obama, in all of his great wisdom, suggested that we had a red line, the West had a red line with regard to the use of such chemical weapons. And then it turns out that the violation of the red line didn't actually mean anything to Barack Obama. And so he basically handed over control to the Russians. The Russians came in, they said, don't worry, we'll take care of the chemical weapons problems. We'll take care of everything. And so that became a preserve of the Russians. So much so that when Israel was flying sorties over Syria in order to prevent material from reaching Lebanon and Hezbollah in Lebanon, they actually had to get Russian permission, so they didn't come into direct conflict with the Russians. Okay, so there's a problem. The Russians have been a little busy lately. You may have noticed that they are bogged down in an interminable war in Ukraine, in which they themselves have lost hundreds of thousands of troops. And so what does that mean? It means the other support leg for the Assad regime was basically gone. And that meant that the Assad regime itself was basically gone. And that's why you've seen this lightning offensive from these Sunni terrorist groups. I mean, that is essentially what they are. Anybody who's trying to soft pedal exactly the people who are now in charge of Syria, I think is whistling past the graveyard, to say the very least. The leader of the Sunni Islamist rebels is a guy named Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani. How much of a terrorist is this guy? The U.S. State Department has a $10 million reward on his head. He is, according to Jerome Dravan, a senior analyst of jihad and modern conflict at the International Crisis Group, the most important player on the ground in Syria. Originally, he was a member of both al-Qaeda and at one point ISIS. He's kind of bouncing between the two of them. And then he launched his own terror group called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And he took over some areas of Syria. And he attempted to play himself off as less of a terrorist, more of a moderate. He was apparently only going to focus in on situationally improving the lives of the people in his area. This, by the way, did involve significant human rights abuses against, for example, Christians. Again, there are no good guys here. Okay, Bashar al-Assad, really bad guy. Jawlani, really bad guy. All these other terrorist groups, really bad. There are some people on the ground who presumably aren't as bad. That'd be, you would imagine, the Druze, the Kurds, but those are not the main forces that we're talking about right now. So according to the New York Times, al-Jawlani is now attempting to position himself as a sort of moderate. He was running a place called Idlib, which is in sort of the northwest of Syria, and then he kind of swept down across the rest of Syria and took over Damascus yesterday and today. In Idlib, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has espoused a government guided by conservative and at times hardline Sunni Islamist ideology. So basically, similar to the Taliban, sort of. Since the rebel offensive began, however, al-Jawlani has sought to reassure minority communities from other sects and religions. These are the kinds of words that were being said, as you recall, by the Taliban before the United States pulled out of Afghanistan in the first place. So, is this going to be a perfect situation? Of course not. There are no perfect situations here. There are no perfect situations. What does it mean? I'll tell you what it means in 1 second for kind of all the players involved, because there's, as always in the Middle East, some upsides with Assad being gone and some significant downsides with Assad being gone. There are not a lot of wonderful players in the Middle East. I'll get to that in a moment. First, no one wants to think about debt. The cold, hard truth of it is many of us will get deeper in debt during the holidays. My friends at PDS Debt can help with a personalized solution just for you. If you're making payments every month on your debt, your balances aren't going down, PDS does have solutions for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies. No minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit accepted. Start planning today. Get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/react. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/react. pdsdebt.com/react. Okay, so that is the situation on the ground right now. So what does that mean? Okay, well, what it means for Christians is a much more fraught existence. It was already pretty fraught in Syria. All of this pretend that Bashar al-Assad was wonderful to Christians, that is not true. Okay, there were significant human rights predations against Christians on the ground, not only in the areas controlled by Sunni terrorists, but also in the areas that were controlled by Shia terrorists. Syria is about 10% Christian. Okay, so is it about to get worse? It definitely could, which would, of course, be a terrible thing. And then you have the question of what Bashar al-Assad was doing to the country, which is killing hundreds of thousands of people using everything up to and including chemical weapons. Well, he's gone now, and Israel has been striking a lot of the chemical weapons depots to prevent them from falling into the hands of the new rebel alliance over here. Okay, so, again, is any of this wonderful? It isn't. But the one thing that is an upside is that the Iranian crescent is dead. Okay, the Shia crescent that, again, stretched all the way from Iran all the way across to Lebanon, that is now dead. What does that mean? It means that the Iranian regime is actually in quite real trouble here. All of their biggest proxies are gone. Hamas, gone. Hezbollah, gone. Assad, gone. That means the Shia influence game is beginning to wane. It's beginning to end. The Houthis are basically isolated down there in Yemen. The Shia regime in Iran still has impact in Iraq, but internally they are much, much, much weaker right now. So the border countries, what are they doing? Turkey is doing incursions into northern Syria. They were probably behind much of what's going on right now. They're attempting to grab territory in northern Syria. They're creating their own buffer zone. They're attempting to encroach on Kurdish territory, again, in the northeast of the country. Meanwhile, Israel in the south has the Golan Heights. And anybody, by the way, who thought that it was a good idea for Israel to give up the Golan Heights, yeah, you're an idiot. Okay, it's a good thing Israel has the Golan Heights. Otherwise, you'd have Sunni terrorists sitting up top over the Lake Tiberias and firing down into the valley in Israel. Okay, so Israel controls that area. They've been moving up into their own buffer zone over at Mount Hermon, which is in Syria. It's kind of the strategic height of the region. Okay, meanwhile, again, you have the Syrian government, which has now abdicated. They are turning over control to this rebel alliance. Unclear exactly what's going to result. Because again, you still have all of these players on the ground who are fighting one another. They may be united against Assad, but now Assad is gone. So Assad's family is out. The rebels, again, arrived in Damascus. Meanwhile, you have the Kurds who are still controlling a large swath of territory. What does it really mean? It means that Russia is weak. Iran is weak. These were paper tigers. And their attempts to invade Ukraine and invade Israel, respectively, those went really poorly for them. What you are watching is the complete collapse of the Russian-Iranian alliance in Syria, and it is indicative of the interior weakness of these countries, which is something to remember going forward. President Biden said this is the first time ever either Russia nor Iran or Hezbollah could defend a foreign regime in Syria. This is the direct result of the blows Ukraine and Israel delivered. This is what he said in a statement. No thanks to Joe Biden, by the way, who's continuing to slow walk weapons to both Ukraine and also to Israel. So if it had been up to Joe Biden, presumably those allies never would have been properly armed. But it is a very good thing and indicative, again, of the weakness of Russia and Iran, what has happened in Syria. Now, net, I think it'll probably be a good thing. But there are no great things in the Middle East. It just doesn't exist. A lot of bad people in a lot of areas in the Middle East. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens next. Man, it's going to be very difficult to sort of see and foresee what happens from here on in, because there are just too many competitive groups. Many of them are terrorists on all sides of the aisle. And so everybody who's sort of happy talking this thing, it's a day of liberty and freedom. Just hold your horses. It's certainly not a day of liberty and freedom for many of the Christians who are living in Syria. Unfortunately, it is not a day of liberty and freedom, I think, for pretty much anybody who's living in Syria, but it wasn't in the first place. It turns out, as always in the Middle East, a lot of bad answers to a lot of very difficult questions. We'll see you here tomorrow. I'll recap all of this. I'll bring maps. I'll show you the whole thing. We'll see you tomorrow. Alrighty, so we are here reacting to what was, in any normal circumstance, a car crash interview by Kamala Harris. Tim Walz was there as her emotional support animal, but he really didn't have any answers for anything. He kind of sat there silently. The entire setup of the interview was bizarre. Dana Bash did a horrifyingly bad job. She would ask a kind of tough question only to never follow it up, just abandon the thread. So there was no actual pushback when Kamala Harris or Tim Walz lied. Before we go any further, I want to remind you that we do have a special deal going on over at Daily Wire. We have a Labor Day deal. You get 40% off right now at our Labor Day sale. All you have to do is head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use promo code LABOR40 at checkout to get that special deal. Again, we're bringing you updates all throughout the election cycle. We can only do that because of your membership, so we really appreciate it. Okay, now back to the interview. There were a bunch of F-ups here by Kamala Harris that are going to be used in campaign ads. And that really is the measure of the interview, because as an interview, it was really boring. Not a lot happened, actually, during the interview. She word saladed a lot. She filibustered a lot. There was a lot of just mush mouth coming out of Kamala Harris. She looked kind of awkward. Her mannerisms, she looked like she was not comfortable being there. Tim Walz looked uncomfortable being there. She was clearly very nervous. She doesn't want to be in front of a camera answering actual questions. The very first question was, what are you going to do day one? And she didn't have an answer for that. She filibustered that answer. That's like the number one question every presidential candidate gets. How did she not have an answer for that? But that's not what's going to damage her. There are a couple of answers here that actually are going to damage her. The first answer that is going to be a real problem for her is she was asked about her constantly changing and vacillating positions. And they're all over the place. They're constantly changing, constantly vacillating. So she was specifically asked about fracking. And she said, well, I was against fracking, but then I changed my position in 2020. Now, remember, her campaign actually ended in 2019. It didn't make it to 2020. She changed her position because it wasn't Joe Biden's position when she was running for vice president. So she says, in 2019, I was against fracking. Then in 2020, I was pro-fracking. And believe you me, right now, I am definitely pro-fracking. And you can believe me because I'm saying so, because I changed then, but I won't change again. Bad answer, especially because she was asked by Dana Bash, why do you change your positions? Like, do you have any explanation for why these positions changed? And not only that, Dana Bash went further. Dana Bash, being a very kind and generous interviewer, which is to say, being in the pocket of the Harris-Walz campaign, she actually offered her multiple choice options. So she actually said to her, did you change your positions because you maybe evolved or maybe because you learned new information? And Kamala Harris then completely avoided either of those answers, both of which are totally plausible on our multiple choice exam to be president of the United States. And instead, she went with, I haven't changed any of my values. That line is going to be at the center of a lot of attack ads from the Trump campaign because she hasn't changed her values. She has not. The Green New Deal is a radical piece of legislation. The Inflation Reduction Act is a radical piece of legislation. She was for open borders. She tried to bring herself off as a border hawk. And when she was asked about the open borders policy of the Biden administration for the first 3.5 years, she started talking about Donald Trump and how she was a prosecutor at one point. That dog is not going to hunt if somebody actually asks her an aggressive line of questioning. The question will be whether she does an interview ever again after this one. The other answer that I think is really going to harm her is her answer on Joe Biden. So Dana Bash said, you were a big defender of Joe Biden. You said he was healthy. You said everything was fine, hunky-dory, better than great. He was awesome. Do you have any regrets about that? And she doubled down. She said, no regrets about that. He's intelligent. He's smart. He's with it. He's the kind of person you want to be president. Now, this is where Dana Bash's sycophancy is a sin. This is where her being a kiss ass is a real sin. She should have said back to Kamala Harris, okay, you say that he's smart and he's healthy and he's with it. So why did he drop out? Do you want him to get back in? Do you think that he should get back in? Like, well, why shouldn't he? Did you win any primary votes? That's where she should have pressed. And presumably Donald Trump will have to press her on that if given the opportunity during the debate on September 10th. But Dana Bash, really let her off the hook on that one. Again, her lying to the American people for years about the health status of Joe Biden is really a major issue that has not been tapped yet. Because most Americans think that she was lying and that everyone was lying. But we didn't get a lot of talk about that. We got a lot of talk about how she was serving out bacon to her little nieces or something when she got the news from Joe Biden. So that answer is not going to be particularly helpful to her. The rest of it was basically just a mashup of platitudes and nonsense and her talking about the significance of time. She actually did that again. One of her favorite crutches is when we talk about the significance of, that is her stalling for time. It's her crutch. She doesn't have anything to say, so she starts talking about the significance of the thing that she knows nothing about. So she's asked about climate change, and she'll start talking about the significance of climate change. Well, that wasn't the question. The question is, what's your policy? Or she's asked, first of all, I don't understand how there are no questions about her tax policy. She's literally proposing a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains, which is insane. How is there no question? I mean, Dana Bash betrayed her profession tonight. She really did. Horrifyingly bad job. Now, Tim Walz, again, he was just kind of there as backup, I guess. It was super weird. He sat there silently for nearly the entire interview. He was brought in near the end to talk about how proud he was of his son. That's fine. He was asked some questions about the fact that he has lied about his DUI back in 1995, about his military service, about his wife's IVF, that he's lied about all of these things. And he said something about how, well, you mess up when you talk a lot. He should have just said, listen, if I make mistakes, I try to correct them, which is not true, by the way. He certainly does not. He said something about how he screwed up the grammar, but people will give him... Is any of this going to really ding Tim Walz in a serious way? I seriously doubt it. Also, the VP candidate just doesn't matter all that much. Suffice it to say his answers were not brilliant. I don't think they did him any sort of serious damage. But it was weird to have him there. Like, he shouldn't have been there at all. And it made Kamala Harris look a little bit minor league. And why is she doing that? Now, one point I will hand to Kamala Harris. Her campaign is smart enough to recognize that she should not steer into the racial identitarianism. She was asked twice racially identitarian questions by Dana Bash. She was asked about Donald Trump and his talk about whether she was truly black or not, and she completely ignored that question. She just said, he does that all the time. Next question. That is a smart answer. It is. It's an actual smart answer by Kamala Harris. Then later on, she was asked about this ridiculous photograph that for some reason Democrats love. I mean, I get why, because she looks like an authoritarian dictator in it. I mean, she's like up against a white backdrop or against a lit backdrop, and there's a little girl who's profiled from behind, gazing glowingly up and worshipfully up at Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris is asked about first woman, first black woman, all this kind of stuff. And she gives I'm just here to be the good president. That's a good answer. That is a good answer. But those were the sole bright spots. The rest of it was just argle-bargle. It was just nonsense. The thing is that our standards have been set so unbelievably low in presidential politics that if she didn't physically crap herself in the middle of the interview, it was a massive improvement over Joe Biden. And, her kind of wandering all over the landscape in search of an idea, not a great shock. Of course, we've been here before. So, like on a scale of 1 to 10, was this like a true car crash? Again, in any normal circumstance, it's a car crash. Is this a true car crash for Kamala? Like, is it going to do serious damage to her campaign? No. Is it going to grow her audience? Is it going to make people feel super comfortable with her? Also no. So did it move the ball forward for her? Well, I mean, I suppose that it quieted the criticism that she doesn't take questions or something for like a moment. But that's not going to go away. If this is the only interview that she does from now until the debate, everyone is going to go right back to, you booked a softball interview in which you were interviewed for like 7 seconds by Dana Bash. And then you went back hiding on the campaign trail. So is it going to quiet those critiques? I think not. Do I think this actually changed much? I don't. Do I think it exposes why they will not let her in front of cameras for love or money if they can help it without a teleprompter? Absolutely. Kamala Harris is truly bad at this. Reminder, we bring you these updates all throughout the campaign. Once again, you're going to want to go over to dailywire.com/subscribe, become a member, help us, help you. Use code LABOR40 and get 40% off for your Labor Day sale this weekend. Go check it out right now, dailywire.com/subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow with the entire recap of everything in detail, plus all of the controversy surrounding Donald Trump and abortion. He opened a bit of a can of worms today. We'll get into that tomorrow. We'll see you then. Well, joining us online to discuss this debate is Vivek Ramaswamy. Of course, you know Vivek from his presidential run. He's been on this stage a few times himself. Vivek, welcome to the show. Great to talk to you.
Hey, good to see you, man.
I have to get your quick take on last night's debate, the 3-on-1 pile-on, the David Muir and Lindsey Davis versus Donald Trump debate. What was your take?
So a few things. I mean, I'll call like I see it, right? Did Kamala Harris exceed the already low and purposefully low expectation set for her? Yeah, I think she did. But the media narrative is now magnifying that into something that was very different than what actually happened. I thought Donald Trump's best moment, I think the best moment for either candidate on substance last night, I actually think, was Donald Trump being able to inform a lot of independent voters and a lot of undecided voters what his actual position, the Republican Party's actual position is on abortion, on IVF, where they've told the public for a long time, the Harris campaign and the media has embedded this, saying that he would sign a federal ban on abortion. I actually thought that was one of the exchanges where he came out with crystal clarity, and also the fact that he's going to champion IVF. I know that seems like one of the smaller topic-focused takeaways from last night, but if you fast forward this 3 weeks, that's one of the most substantive impacts I think it's going to have on the race for an issue that a lot of people do seem to think is a big one for the presidential race at the level of voters. I think the 3-on-1 pile-on was an embarrassment for ABC. I think that David Muir in particular did an awful job of even feigning even-handedness. Often what you see in media bias is you'll see the appearance of feigning balance. I think in David Muir's case, they didn't even try to feign balance with the number of times they fact-checked, I use that in air quotes, fact-checked Donald Trump, but without even attempting to really go after Kamala Harris for her prevarication on a wide range of topics. So that was a bit of a disappointment. The other thing that I think President Trump, could hit even harder, I think he hit it hard last night, but I hope in any future debates that come up he does, is the question he really nailed in the conclusion, which is, why haven't you done everything that you're now saying you're going to do over the 4 years that you actually held power along with Joe Biden? He made a compelling case for that in the closing. I thought one of his sharpest moments was actually said when he said, we can end this debate and you can actually go back and sign a bill. And if not sign a bill, take an executive action. that would close the border. And in some ways that, in that short moment, highlighted what I think is probably his most powerful argument throughout all of her race to the center. She can say what she wants, but her actions speak louder than words. And I think the best moments for him were last night when he actually allowed that theme to come through. Overall, 2 weeks from now, I don't think this is going to have a major impact on the race. I think it's going to come down to a couple of open issues that haven't been addressed on policy by Kamala Harris. But that's my off the press.
No, I mean, I totally agree, obviously, with all of that. I think that mostly for me and for a lot of people, this felt like a missed opportunity more than anything else, because Kamala Harris has been avoiding questions like the plague. She's going to continue to avoid questions like the plague because she can't answer any of those questions. And it seems to me this race really revolves around Donald Trump establishing about her three very basic principles. One, she's the vice president. She's currently responsible for everything that is happening in the White House. The president is not competent. She's the vice president. She owns all of this. Two, she's a far leftist. She herself has said her values have not changed. So even if she's pretending that her actual policies have changed, her values have not, she's admitted as much. And three, she's an incompetent, and she's always been an incompetent. And I don't think that he actually was able to really establish any of those things on the stage last night. I think he planted seeds. The problem was that there was so much going on. He was so distracted, I think, by many of the attacks that she was leveling against him, against his rallies, that it just felt discombobulated. And what we really needed was something that was a lot more focused. And I'm hoping that there are 2 months to go. It's still a long time. That this campaign gets a lot more focused on those issues and just sticks to those issues and pummels her on those.
Yeah, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse and complaining about aspects of last night. One hard reality is that would have been a job for the moderators in a format in which they have muted mics. You know, Donald Trump, I think, did try at several points in time to address questions to Kamala Harris, but that wasn't the level or the type of format that had been negotiated. And when the moderators completely abdicated that responsibility, I think it was a missed opportunity for voters, is what I would say, to see a lot of those holes in Kamala Harris's policy positions. I agree with 90% of what you said. The only part I disagree with, you and maybe some others when they've made this claim, is I think calling Kamala Harris a far left Marxist is almost giving her too much credit. It assumes that she's ideological, right? Bernie Sanders is ideological. Okay, you could give somebody, I disagree with his ideology, but he has an ideology. I don't think Kamala Harris particularly has an ideology. I think what's closer to the flame is the idea that she's just another cog in the system.
You've said it before, it's totally right, by the way. It's totally right. I mean, they're slapping a new coat of paint on this ugly jalopy. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my perspective on, as we wrap up the debate from last night. Basic thing is I think a lot's going to happen in the next 6 weeks, and 2 weeks from now, I think much of that debate's going to be irrelevant, except for, I think, the ability to take the legs out from under the Democrat argument on abortion, which I think was a quiet but underappreciated positive coming out of last night.
Well, Vivek Ramaswamy, again, good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Are you tired of the lies and the twist of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda. Well, folks, good news from Argentina. Cool things happening there. Last night, Argentina shocked the world by electing a libertarian outsider named Javier Milei. Now, Milei is by far the most entertaining person in the world. I mean, on the planet. Javier Milei, this guy is wildly entertaining. Not only because he happens to be extremely conservative. And we say he's libertarian, not an abortion he ain't. He is a full-scale proponent of the pro-life position. For example, he also does not happen to be particularly libertarian on certain forms of drug use, for example. So the description of him as a libertarian is not quite right. He's actually just a classical liberal with very conservative undertones in terms of religion and the importance of culture. He's great, in other words. So he won a huge victory yesterday in Argentina's presidential election, vowing to halt decades of economic decline in a country reeling from triple-digit inflation. Inflation right now is at 143%, which means that pretty much every day, everything gets more expensive, and that becomes a spiral. This is according to the AFP. With 55.7% of the vote, Milei thumped his rival, economy minister Sergio Massa, who won 44% of the vote and rapidly conceded defeat. Milei said in his victory speech, quote, "Today begins the reconstruction of Argentina. Today begins the end of Argentina's decline. The model of decadence has come to an end. There is no way back." Latin America's third biggest economy has suffered decades of crises under interventionist governments big on welfare that resort to printing money to finance spending, fueling inflation, while borrowing heavily only to default on their debt. Access to dollars is strictly controlled, leading to a thriving black market for greenbacks. Analysts warn the peso is ripe for a sharp devaluation. So despite all of the inflation that's been taking place, actually, the peso is still worth too much money because you can't trade it for U.S. dollars. If you could trade it for U.S. dollars, that means the peso is worth even less money. Milei's main platform has been a plan to ditch the peso for the US dollar and dynamite the central bank to do away with the cancer of inflation. Now, the problem is they don't have enough dollars to inject into the economy right away. So in order to really do that, they're going to have to reestablish credit worthiness. They're probably going to have to borrow a bunch of new money from the IMF, from the International Monetary Fund. However, Milei is just the guy to do this sort of stuff. He is incredibly bold. He also has suggested that he wants to cut ties on a governmental level with Brazil and China, saying he would not do business with communists. Now, it's going to be rough on an interpersonal and business level to do that sort of thing. And he has vowed that he's not going to do that. However, he is very much oriented toward the West, which means that the press hate him. That's the way that this works. If you're Jair Bolsonaro and you're very oriented toward the West, you like the United States, for example, you like Israel, you like Europe, that means that you're super bad. If you're Lula da Silva, who is an actual tyrant in Brazil and who loves Russia and who loves China and who loves Iran, then you're good, according to the international press. Again, the media, the international media, they are a smoking garbage heap, or run by activists from the left, which is why they hate Javier Milei. Think about the memories you're going to make during these holidays with those you love. Those moments around the dinner table, flag football out in the yard, or a 5K turkey trot early in the morning. Now, imagine being able to relive those holidays past with your own family. Recording a lifetime of memories used to be commitment. Camcorders cost thousands of dollars, tapes were expensive, cameras required film and development. Well, Legacy Box exists to preserve your family's recorded moments digitally, ensuring their safety forever. Out in your garage, you got a bunch of old film reels. Do you have a film projector? Have you been preserving that stuff? Not really. It's just sitting out there, and it's getting all moldy, and bugs are getting into it and stuff. Instead, send it to Legacy Box and preserve it forever. Legacy Box is a simple, safe solution for digitizing all your memories. By going to legacybox.com/Shapiro, you can enjoy 40% off when you get started with Legacy Box today. The process is super simple. I've done it multiple times. Done it for my parents. I've done it for my in-laws. Done it for myself. You send in your Legacy Box filled with old VHS tapes, camcorder tapes, pictures. Their team digitizes everything by hand right here in the United States. You'll get it back on the cloud or thumb drive along with your originals. Legacy Box digitizes over 15 different types of analog media, so whether it's VHS tapes, super 8mm film reels, or photo negatives, they have you covered. It's a fantastic holiday gift. Legacy Box's Black Friday event is here. They're giving our listeners their best deal of the year. Visit legacybox.com/Shapiro. Save an unreal 65%. With limited quantities ready to ship, this deal is going to go super fast. Legacybox.com/Shapiro for 65% off. Again, that's legacybox.com/Shapiro. Go check them out right now. It takes an amazing team of people to make this show successful, just like it takes an amazing team to make any business successful. We found a lot of these people on ZipRecruiter, and you can too. If you're hiring, you need to find the best people for your team. You need ZipRecruiter right now. You can try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. ZipRecruiter uses smart technology to scan thousands of resumes to find the most qualified people for your job. ZipRecruiter lets the most qualified people know they are a great match and encourages them to apply. ZipRecruiter is trusted by millions. In fact, over 3.8 million businesses have come to ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. See for yourself why so many business owners and hiring managers are thankful for ZipRecruiter. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within day one. I'd be super grateful if you could go to this exclusive web address right now and try ZipRecruiter for free. ZipRecruiter.com/dailywire. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/DAILYWIRE. ZipRecruiter is indeed the smartest way to hire. I want to play some clips of Javier Milei because he is wildly entertaining. So I'm going to translate. Not that I speak Spanish, but the translations are available. Here is Javier Milei recently in an interview about the left. And man, he's the most memeable person alive.
Al zurdo de no le podés dar ni un milímetro.
Says you can't give leftards an inch. Says, can you define? Leftist is all collectivists. All kinds of collectivists. But why do you call them she asks? Because they are he says. If you think differently from them, she says, he says they will kill you. This is the point. You can't give leftists an inch. If you give them an inch, they will use it to destroy you. You can't negotiate with leftards. You don't negotiate with trash because they will end you. Okay, so that is who just got elected, the president of Argentina. Again, very much oriented toward the United States. Here he was talking about his agenda. This one is a little bit less colorful.
Nuestros ejes fundamentales son el libre comercio, la paz,
he said our fundamental axes are free trade, peace, freedom, and aligning ourselves with the West. Where the highest references in this, for us, are the United States and Israel. And as for China, asked Bloomberg News, is it one of the main trading partners? As well, they will be business partners of the private sector. We do not make a pact with communists. But then what would you do? In other words, would it not close Argentina's relations with China? He says, I would not promote relations with communists, nor with Cuba, nor with Venezuela, nor with North Korea, nor with Nicaragua, nor with China. And so for Venezuela, you're changing policy. He says, obviously. Love it. Love it. And by the way, it's going to be a test of the Biden administration as to what they do with this guy, because if they do not immediately bring Milei and Argentina into the fold, it is proof positive that this administration does not give a damn about pro-America sentiments in Latin and South America. This guy is begging for Argentina to make great friends with the United States. If Biden somehow rejects that on behalf of international leftism, it demonstrates full scale the impact of a foreign policy rooted in leftist nonsense. Meanwhile, here's Milei on dollarization. That, of course, would be the transfer away from the absolutely worthless Argentinian peso and toward the American dollar.
I think there's a previous discussion about dollarization. Actually, strictly speaking, it's to get rid of the central bank. The dollarization is an instrumental issue at the end of the day. There are four argumentative axes. One has to do with a moral issue, which is that stealing is wrong. And seigniorage is nothing more or less than a swindle by politicians against good people. Therefore, let's say if we consider that stealing is wrong, one of the greatest thieves in the history of mankind is the central bank. The second point has to do with a technical issue, because in the Argentine case, it is more evident when a product has no demand, its price is zero. So, if the local currency has no demand, and its price should be zero, the equilibrium real balances are zero. Whatever amount of money a central bank wishes to impose, the counterpart is that the price level is infinite. Demand and its price should be zero. Equilibrium, real balances are zero. Whatever amount of money a central bank wants to impose, the flip side is that the price level has infinity.
Okay, this is correct. What he's saying is you can't just pump money into the economy and then pretend that the money is worth anything. It isn't. He's staunchly anti-abortion. He favors looser gun laws. He has criticized Pope Francis in the most colorful of terms. He makes me look like a piker in that particular department. He used to carry around a chainsaw in a symbol of his plan to the government, which is just the best. This is just the best. And again, here's maybe my favorite Milei video. There are a bunch of them that are just spectacular. And if you've never seen a picture of Milei, he looks like dorky Wolverine. It's amazing. He's got like the big hair and he's got mutton chops, and he's famously suggested that he's not cut his hair since high school. He's a very kind of Trumpy character in his own personal life. He used to talk pretty openly about being like a tantric sex guru and all the rest of this kind of stuff. It's hysterical stuff. This is the video that probably of him has gone the most viral. And for those who can't see, he is standing next to a whiteboard with taped up on the whiteboard are the names of the various ministries in Argentina. And he's just going through and ripping them down and saying that he's going to throw them out. Here we go. His Ministry of Sports and Tourism, out. Ministry of Culture, fuera. Ministry of the Environment and Sustainable Development, out. Ministry of Women, Genders and Diversity, out. Ministry of Public Works. He says out. Even if you resist, it's stuck to the board. Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. Ministry of Labor, Employment and Social Security. Ministry of Education, Indoctrination, out. Ministry of Transport, out. Ministry of Health, out. Ministry of Social Development, out. The theory of politics is over. Long live damn liberty. He's great. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Facts, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.
In one of your more infamous debates, you said, I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Yes.
My argument is not that terms like biological female or biological male are necessarily offensive. My argument is that you are saying that referring to a trans woman as a woman or a trans man as a man or et cetera, is like inherently offensive or threatens biology. And I'm curious why it's so threatened when there's clear precedent for changing the language.
Again, the term mother does not include father. Every category has to have boundaries. The boundary of female starts at male. And when you start including male in the category of female, you are threatening biological definitions as well as basic truth.
Well, you could say the category of mother starts at conception or, a biological relation to an offspring. But as we know,
But again, the idea that the idea of motherhood being the act of mothering, right? And that is a female. A female does the act of mothering. You can say that a female who does the act of mothering is a mother, but you also have a special category called biological motherhood. I'm not going to say that an adoptive mom and a biological mom have precisely the same definition. They don't. They're underneath a subset of category called motherhood. That motherhood sometimes involves birth, sometimes it does not, but it certainly involves being a female.
What do you think about the distinction between cis women and trans women?
Explain.
Well, you're saying that a more inclusive usage of the word mother isn't particularly offensive because we also have biological mother.
Yes.
We've offered the term cis woman, and even biological woman or assigned female at birth. We've offered a variety of terms that properly categorize people.
Again, you cannot extend the term woman to apply to a biological male. Every category has an endpoint. If there are only two categories, male and female, and you say that female now is in this category, there are no definitions. There are no definitions. I mean, to paraphrase my friend Matt Walsh, I'm going to need you to explain what a woman is without reference to the word woman. We can go on all day like this, but...
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily circular to say that a woman is someone who exhibits womanhood.
Yes, it is.
And that...
It's definitionally circular.
Well...
That's like saying a hand is something that fundamentally shows handhood.
Well, what I have
a tree is something that demonstrates the qualities of treehood. What new actual definitional content have you added to the word?
I can define womanhood for you, which is a set of characteristics associated with females, and a woman as someone who exhibits said womanhood.
Okay, well, you have just used the word female and woman to define each other. So you say a woman is a female, but not a biological female. A female is a woman, and a woman is a female, but at no point have you added any new content.
No, I said a woman is someone who exhibits womanhood, and womanhood is a set of characteristics.
Yes, and that doesn't mean anything.
Why does, how does it not mean
the reason
anything?
It doesn't mean... Okay, again, a dog is a thing that exhibits the characteristics of doghood. It's a set of characteristics characterized by being a dog. I've added no content to that. If you have no idea what a dog is, you still have no idea what a dog is.
There are plenty of labels that refer to concepts. This is not a new thing.
It's not a label referring to a concept. It's a label that's referring to the same word as the concept. You can't do that. It's fundamentally circular.
To the same word. I'm saying that womanhood...
You have not defined even womanhood. You said a set of characteristics that applies to females, and then you're applying it to males. So clearly this is nonsensical. I'm sorry that it doesn't... I'm sorry that your attempts to worm a definition into nonsense are not succeeding, but like... I can't make that fit into logic because it doesn't. I mean, I'm sorry. I talk about preborn a lot on this show. I believe in their mission. I know you do too. Who wouldn't want to help moms and their kids in crisis? Preborn is the largest provider of free ultrasounds in the United States. They connect with women who are considering abortion, offer them a free ultrasound so they can hear their child's heartbeat. This divine connection has proven to double the probability that a mom will choose to carry her child to term. Every day, Preborn's network of clinics saves 200 babies' lives. But it doesn't stop there. They offer moms maternity clothes, doctor visits, and the support they need to raise a child after giving birth. It's an incredible organization I am proud to stand behind. You can support Preborn right now with a gift of just $28. This will cover the cost of one free ultrasound and could save the life of an unborn child. It's the most important thing you're going to do today. To donate, just dial pound 250, say keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or donate securely at preborn.com/Ben. Again, that's preborn.com/Ben. Go check them out right now. Preborn.com/Ben. Start saving a life. Just takes $28. Preborn.com/Ben.
Hey, Ben. This week in Israel, they reported that like 76% of Israelis thought that Netanyahu should step down. And I'm curious, like, because Israel doesn't have a figurehead like Zelensky to rally around, is Netanyahu doing more harm than good? Also, I'm curious if you would have on Dean Phillips for a Sunday special.
So I'm not really aware of Dean Phillips other than he's running against Biden, right? That's the guy. I didn't hear of him until he ran against Biden. So sure, I guess, why not? I mean, sure, okay. But in any case, as far as Netanyahu, the reason that Israelis are very anti-Netanyahu is that Israelis actually are reacting the way that I would hope that Americans reacted to bad presidents, which is when a president fails, they get very angry at it. So this is the single greatest security failure in Israeli history. And so even a lot of people who voted for Netanyahu in Israel are now very anti-Netanyahu. Now, the way that it works in Israel is because they have a coalition government, they actually have to have a vote of no confidence, and then a majority has to vote Netanyahu out. That's not going to happen right now. But whenever people on the left or in the media start talking about the right-wing Netanyahu government, that's ridiculous and ignorant, considering that right now they have a unity government that includes Benny Gantz, who's on the center left. right? The fact is that Israel has come together in incredible ways in the after. It reminds me of 9/11 in the United States. Like, people came together for a hot second here. I think it's going to last a lot longer there, because the truth is that as devastating as 9/11 was for the United States, Israel's a much, much smaller country. And so in terms of sort of the feeling of insecurity, they're also surrounded on every border by people who don't like them very much. And so I think that the future of the state of Israel is going to be a lot more unified. But yeah, I mean, Netanyahu's going to take a serious political hit at some point in the future.
What about, like, internationally?
I mean, internationally, I think people are looking for an excuse to be putting pressure on Israel, because the easiest solution is always weapons down, everybody calm down, a few Jews got killed, but whatever, we don't want this thing to escalate. The reality is, what is in the best interest of pretty much everybody, except for the Iranians, is for Hamas to be destroyed completely and utterly. That's in the best interest of the Europeans. It's in everybody's best interest, including, by the way, Sunni governments.
Hi there. All right,
Howdy.
so Wisconsin was in like a $7 billion budget, and yet a lot of the smaller two-year trade schools in the UW system and like four-year engineering schools are losing money. They're firing people. They're like leaving, getting less students. And this is because the Republican legislature, didn't increase funding. They decreased it in hopes to get rid of the DEI department. I go here. DEI department's like not that big of a deal. Like, if you want to go, you can. If you don't want to go, you can kind of just avoid it. Is it really worth like lowering educational opportunities for people, raising tuitions, and decreasing enrollment in like very important trade schools for the purpose of like ending DEI at a school where the value is still going to be here?
So you're asking the wrong guy. I think that every major university in the United States should cut its entire liberal arts department and tell people to get a life. Meaning that
there's smaller universities though that
I understand. Yeah. My feeling about college is very simple. If you are able to get somebody to give you a loan to go to the school because they feel that your degree is then going to allow you a higher earning level, then that seems to me a good use of dollars. Subsidizing people's education where a bank would not very often is a giant waste of money. And so the amount of money that's wasted in state schooling systems so that people can get a degree in lesbian dance theory or whatever is silly. And furthermore, if you're majoring in engineering, so to give you an example, I was able to get private loans to go to Harvard Law School. Why? Because they knew when I got out of the other end of Harvard Law School, I was going to earn a bunch of money because I went to Harvard Law School. Okay, the same thing isn't necessarily true if you're majoring in poli-sci at a state school, right? You're still, dude, I majored in poli-sci too. There we go, bro. So here's the thing. You're going to finish up in poli-sci, and then you're going to go to a real school doing real things.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're probably going to go to law school, or you're going to go work in business, or you're going to get an apprenticeship somewhere. And here's the reality. The entire college system is a credentialing scam. Unless you are in the hard sciences, the entire college system should be done away with, and people should go directly into the workforce where they learn how to do a job.
Yeah. So if you want me to like go back, I can. I feel like you didn't fully answer my question, because I'm more saying I agree with you that like trade schools are really important for a community, but I'm saying that the smaller ones rely on like the subsidies from the government to stay afloat, and they're currently not getting it because of like this like moral war between like Robin Voss and the Republicans and the Tony Evers about like, you know, DEI here. I feel like there's a ton of people who don't really care, and they want to go to a smaller school in their hometown and learn how to do a trade.
I hear you,
and
I'm just saying I'm more extreme than the Republican legislature, and I would slash and burn my way through the college budgets.
Fair enough. All right. All right. Hey, you have a good one.
Are you tired of the lies and the twist of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda. Alrighty, folks, it's time for another episode of Ben Reacts, thanks to President Joe Biden, who tonight pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, in the most expected scandal of recent memory. Remember, folks, don't miss out on breaking news and exclusive content like these React videos. Join Daily Wire Plus today during our best deal of the year. Right now, you get 50% off new memberships. No code necessary. It is indeed the final hours of our Black Friday deal. Head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe right now. Alrighty, so the big news of the evening, of course, is that President Joe Biden, who had vowed that he would not, in fact, pardon his son, Hunter Biden, on gun and tax-related charges, he was lying. Who knew? Except for everyone, because, of course, President Joe Biden has always been a super corrupt and venal politician. In fact, from the very beginning of his career, he was attempting to make money for members of his family, whether we were talking about his brothers, whether we were talking about his kids, whether we were talking about his sister, whether we were talking about his entire family. His entire family has been the beneficiary of his political largesse. They've all used his name in order to pull down sacks of cash. And Hunter Biden, of course, was most famous for doing that, whether he was pulling down sacks of cash by taking money from Ukrainian energy company Burisma, having no expertise in Ukraine or in energy, whether he was attempting to take down sacks of cash from the Chinese with 10% held in trust for the big guy. That is according, again, to contemporaneous emails that were found on the Hunter Biden laptop, which were then covered up by the media and, of course, by the intelligence community, which claimed that it was probably Russian disinformation. Well, you'll recall that last year there was a huge scandal because the special counsel, a person named David Weiss, first attempted to bury the Hunter Biden charges, particularly when it came to the question of Foreign Agent Registration Act violations, tax felonies, whether Joe Biden was in fact involved in all of this. He attempted a plea deal with Hunter Biden that would have allowed him to get off scot-free, essentially, with some probation and some community service. And then he attempted to bury the tax charges in the gun charges. In the end, the judge blew that up because the judge looked at the deal and realized that the deal was in fact unbelievably corrupt, and there was no way to even pretend that it wasn't. So in the end, David Weiss and company at the DOJ, they had to go back to the drawing board, and eventually the judge in that particular case accepted a guilty plea in a 9-count indictment, 3 felony tax offenses, 6 misdemeanor tax offenses, as well as a gun charge because he had lied on his gun intake form. He had suggested that he was not in fact a drug addict when he was in fact a drug addict. Now again, those convictions did not get to the root of the matter with regard to Hunter Biden, which was he in fact a bag man for daddy? I mean, we have texts from Hunter Biden to his own children suggesting that he paid the family bills. So the chances that he was not in fact a bag man for the Biden family are pretty much zero. Everyone all over the world knew that daddy was the one with the weight, and they figured that by paying Hunter Biden, they would basically buy off daddy. This was always the bargain. Hunter Biden basically admitted as much. He went on national television, and he was asked whether he would have ever obtained any of these highly paid foreign jobs if not for his last name, and he said no. And he said no. Well, Hunter Biden, again, gets convicted. He goes to jail. That happens back in September. And part of the reason why this happened back in September is because, as you'll recall, there were still ongoing questions as to whether Donald Trump was going to go to jail. So one of the ways that the DOJ responded to allegations of impropriety and corruption in going after Donald Trump was to convict Hunter Biden, the president's son, on this variety of charges without ever touching Joe Biden. So the idea was the DOJ was definitely not corrupt because after all, the DOJ went out of its way to go after the president's son, even if it was leaving the president of the United States alone. Well, Joe Biden, you'll remember back in July, suggested that if his son was in fact convicted, he would not pardon him. And then after his son was convicted, he still said that he would not pardon him. You remember this? Well, it turns out that he was lying all along. So tonight, we find out that he was not only pardoned on the charges for which he ended up being criminally convicted or pleading guilty, he was actually pardoned with regard to anything he did between period January 1, 2014 and December 1st, 2024, including but not limited to all offenses charged or prosecuted, including any that have resulted in convictions by special counsel David C. Weiss. Okay, that is what Joe Biden issued tonight. So it is not just the stuff that he was actually guilty of. It is anything else, right? Any offenses that he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during that entire period. So that entire period, of course, would include pretty much everything related to the Burisma period, which was happening in 2015 and early 2016. Pretty incredible stuff right there. I mean, that is Joe Biden just taking himself off the hook by proxy. That's what that is. We'll get to Joe Biden's statement on the matter in one moment. First, when a big brand says free, what they really mean is see the fine print. There is no shortage of ads from the big wireless carriers offering the latest iPhone for free, of course, but you need to look deeper. You'll quickly realize that in order to qualify, you need to trade in your phone valued at $1,000, enroll in the $100 a month unlimited plan, and then pay the $35 activation fee. It's a lot of money for a free phone. You don't need to do any of that. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, has a better option. Get a brand new iPhone 14, which has all the bells and whistles you need. Plus, you get unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, mobile hotspot, all for $50 a month. How about that? Half the price of the big guys. You get a new iPhone powered by America's most dependable 5G network right now. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Switching is super simple. Plus, when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro, you do get an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. Pure Talk is America's wireless company. Alrighty, so the actual statement that Joe Biden released is really self-serving, as you would imagine. I mean, of course, it has to be self-serving, given the fact that, of course, this is the president pardoning his own son. And understand the corruption here. The entire attempt to convict Hunter Biden was done as a balancing act in order to demonstrate that they were not, in fact, a tool of the Democratic administration. So their case was, we can prosecute Donald Trump willy-nilly, but we're not biased because we are also prosecuting Hunter. But Republicans were saying, well, yeah, I mean, that's all well and good, except that Joe is going to pardon Hunter the minute that he has the opportunity to do so. So it's all a fake. And Joe was like, no, I would never do that. I'm never going to. Well, it turns out we were all right. It was a fake. So Joe Biden puts out a statement and it says this, quote, "Today, I signed a pardon for my son Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making, and I kept my word, even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Those who are late paying their taxes because of serious addictions but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear Hunter was treated differently." Ah, yes, it turns out Joe Biden isn't doing this because Hunter is his son. It's because Hunter was unfairly victimized by the Department of Justice, unlike Donald Trump, who of course had the Department of Justice activated against him. And Joe Biden said that he should, in fact, have the Department of Justice activated against him, while simultaneously the DOJ was openly stating that Joe Biden had committed crimes with regard to classified materials, but he was senile, so they wouldn't prosecute him. Remember, the selectivity tends to run in one particular direction. While the statement goes on, the charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the DOJ unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. That, of course, is not what the judge said. The judge, as you'll recall, in this case, looked at that plea deal, which effectively took the gun charges and then wrapped in all possible tax charges as sort of an addendum to the plea deal on the gun charges. And the judge looked at that and said, wait, I'm not even trying the tax charges. Why in the world would I sign off on a plea agreement that involves cases over which I am not presiding? That's crazy. So, once again, Joe Biden is lying. He says no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. There's been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. He's a victim. He is, Hunter. He spent his entire adult life being a derelict, a drug addict who sires children by random women and then ignores them for years on end, who sleeps with his brother's widow, who runs around the world picking up sacks of cash for his daddy. But don't worry, he's the victim here. In trying to break Hunter, says Joe, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. For my entire career, I've followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. No, we know perfectly well why you came to this decision, Mr. President. We totally get it. It's because you are super corrupt. That's the reason that you came to this particular decision. Listen, I get it, you're a dad, but also you happen to be a super corrupt dad. None of these excuses hold water. And you don't get to claim that you agree with the justice system while you simultaneously undermine it through one of the most corrupt pardons in American history right here, which is exactly what is happening. All right, folks, we're going to have a lot on this tomorrow morning, so you have to make sure that you tune into the show. I have a lot to talk about here that I'm not able to get to in the Ben Reacts, but I wanted to get this out quickly so you know at least my initial thoughts. We'll see you here next time. Or again, remember, right now, this is like your last moment to get that Black Friday deal. Head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe right now and get 50% off your new membership.